Welcome, welcome, bienvenue. Welcome to the Karen Bashford show. Karen Bashford is an empowerment mentor. She is an entrepreneur and a pioneer. We'll talk more about that at a different time. But today, we're talking about something that I have to profess I only know a little bit about, which is women, and specifically about the empowerment of women. And in fact, rather than me going into a whole diatribe about what it's about, I'm going to toss the caber straight over to you, Karen. Explain today's topic.
Well, obviously, what I do is empower women. I've had to learn to empower myself, so now I empower women. This topic, though, particularly for today, was something I wrote on a post on LinkedIn that concerned the imprisonment, rape, and abuse of a woman by a man, obviously, that's gone to court. But the conversations around it is that it's the woman's fault.
This is an old meme, isn't it? It's an old meme.
Drives me nutty. Because if we look at society, men have been the rulers, if you want to put it that way, the patriarchal
men have been in control, have controlled the narrative, certainly.
Yeah. And they have always put women as second-class citizens. It doesn't matter how you look at it. Even in today's modern world, most women are still classed as second-class citizens.
Yes.
And where abuse and trauma is concerned, most women, unfortunately, believe themselves to be unworthy.
So that is a societal ill that's kind of generations in the making, right?
Absolutely. We've carried it down through generations, and we will continue to carry it through generations until a woman empowers herself.
So that, because, I think, until a group of women empower themselves, because there have been women through history who have stood up and said, hang on a moment, my worth is not defined by whether I can lift as heavy objects as you can, or whether or not I can run the 100 meters as fast as you can, but rather in the whole combination of my character and my aptitude and intelligence. Nothing to do with any of that.
No, well, if you think about it, without a woman, society wouldn't live anyway.
Well, this is a salient point. Women are fairly critical.
So how can you say that a woman hasn't got worth?
Right.
But if you consider that history is what's responsible for most of our problems nowadays. Because a woman gives so much to the family and so much to society in her own way, even if she's not in the top job or something like that, or not earning a brilliant amount of money, she still gives so much to society, to family. Right. And that's not acknowledged. And it really bugs me when you read something about a woman being, gone to court to try and get justice for the behavior of somebody who basically just controlled her totally, to the point where he would pass her on to his friends and things like that. I don't know the full story, so I'm just going by what snippets I've got. But even so, it's a story that carries through so often when women are taken cases to court for rape or anything like that. It's always the man that's in the right, not the woman. And until women actually start recognizing and work together to empower themselves, the story is not going to change. I've worked with women who have literally changed their partners because they changed themselves. When a woman can stand up and say, I'm not prepared to accept this.
Yes.
This is change in someone else.
I have to say, and I'm not citing myself out as a modern feminist or any of that. I mean, I do believe in some degree of feminism or modern feminism, but I do remember when I first met my wife, she was very kowtowed and did what I said, and I became very upset with that. And I said, for goodness sake, speak up for yourself. Just don't push back. If I say something and you think something different, push back. Some might say I've created a monster because now she pushes back on everything I say, but that's good in a way, because I know that any agreement that we come to about any topic should at least have put her mark on it, and she won't be just doing it because I've said it. And I think, and I'm not perfect, Christ no, but what I would say is that I think it's absolutely endemic in modern society that women should be seen as decision makers, thought brokers, and people who make push ideas into the forefront of modern society, and not because they've got a man behind them saying, yes, there, dear, you do it now. That they are independent beings in that way, and that makes for a much more balanced society. And hearing about that story, Karen, just demonstrates a whole lack of balance there. It was elements of control all the way through, and that's, that his kink was controlling, obviously, and it led to that, which is horrendous. I think there has to be a more even-handed approach from all sides. I don't know.
That's not going to happen until we actually get more women to recognise that they're worthy.
Quite right.
And that's half the problem. Is society is very good at ignoring things that it doesn't want to know about. We are changing gradually, and very much the spiritual aspects are coming in far more. It's not classed as woo-woo because you talk about, affirmations or, meditation and things like that. Sorry, I don't do affirmations. I don't do meditation, so it's a bit of a challenge for me, but hey. But that's always been classed as slightly woo-woo, but actually we need things like that for more people to connect back, especially women, to who they truly are. Because when you quieten the mind,
I think those sort of things are useful, because so long women have either been oppressed by men, me being one, and perhaps by logical extension society, and they need to almost say, I'm apart from all that. I'm standing up, not just for myself, but with my sisters, with my fellow women all over, so that we aren't an oppressed mass, because we are standing on our own 2 feet.
Yeah, and affirmations are very good for getting a woman to recognize that she is worthy, as is meditation, because meditation quietens the mind. When you quieten the mind, all right, you're still going to have those thoughts coming through. You can't avoid them, but just acknowledge them and let them go. You then start connecting back to yourself in a way that you've dismissed previously. We are all capable of listening to our own intuition. We're born with it. And yet, unwillingly, we have to give it up because our parents teach us that we're listening to rubbish because that's what they believe.
So I think the most dangerous phrase was when people say, when you're adult, you put childish things away. Well, no, some of that childishness is the thing that allows us to be free thinking enough to have opinions and ideas defined by our own exploration. And I think that's the danger there, isn't it? If you become an adult, you can't think about those things anymore.
Well, you can't be playful. Being playful and curious is what turns our world around. It keeps us all looking at things differently.
Yes.
Curiosity created so many things because somebody said, I wonder if I did this, would this happen?
Exactly.
So why can't women say that to themselves? I wonder if I stood up and said no, does that make any difference?
Right. I mean, forgive me, if I look back on your own history, there was a period of time where you didn't want to stand up and say no. Am I right?
I couldn't. I just couldn't physically stand up and say
then no. I'm going to ask you the hard question. What enabled you? What gave you the fuel to be able to say, right, after this, no more?
Recognizing that as a person, I had as much say in my life as anyone else. And most of us don't recognize that.
No, not at all. And not only that, but I suspect you become institutionalized after a while. It becomes the norm to always kowtow to always genuflect, to always bend the knee, to bend down. Yes, I'll do whatever you want. Yes, you want your tea then, you want this then. And there must have been a point where you said, no, my needs are equally as important.
I think
More
the turning
important.
point, to me, the turning point was as I gradually started to learn more about self-development and personal development and things like that. And that's a journey that's been going on since I was probably about 16. So it's a good 50 years. However, the thing that really created the turn for me was actually getting to that point where my body and mind said, I can't do this anymore. And I literally exploded, and I literally mean exploded verbally at my mother, because my mother had been the kind of person that expected to receive and receive and receive.
Right.
And even though she gave back, it was never in a way that matched what I needed. And I just literally reached that point where I just went, can't take this anymore. I burst into tears, yelled at her, and stormed out. And something I'd never, ever done to her before. And that shifted something. But that also triggered a nervous breakdown, because that was my body's way of saying, well, now you started this, let's finish this.
Well, yes, but I suspect this, dare I say, there'd been a burden of guilt inside you that felt guilty that you hadn't taken control of your own life, that you'd let yourself be pushed into this. And then finally you said no more and stood up for yourself. Your body went, hooray, finally, let's shut down for a bit. But I see you now, and ladies and gentlemen, I knew Karen before she had an epiphany, and you're now bright of character. You are fully in control of what goes on in your life. You do things in your own name and not because somebody else has promoted you or told you to do something. This is a different kind of Karen. So other people will want this. This is a desirable trait. So they get that by saying no more. And how do they get to that point?
I think what happened is, for me, as much as my mother being the catalyst or part of the catalyst, was the recognition that I needed to just be me. I'd spent so much just giving to other people, and something within me went, no, it's time to stop this. It's time to actually start looking at what do you want. I'd reached an age where it was like 60 plus, where it was like, well, if I don't do something now, when am I going to do something? You know, it's a hard reality to look at your life and think, for 60 odd years, I've just done everything everyone else told me to. And yet, interestingly enough, I was often classed as being stubborn. How can you be stubborn and follow everyone else's? It was like I had to be stubborn to be able to survive being me.
I think it's what they meant by stubborn was you didn't do it as quickly as they wanted, or you didn't do it as with as much vim and vigor as they wanted. But in truth, perhaps you shouldn't have been doing it for them at all.
The stubbornness they talked about was the fact that I would not budge on certain things, but I wouldn't budge, not because it was good for me, but because I could see that if I did it, it was going to be worse for me. So I was stubborn in the sense of I refused to do certain things because somewhere within me, I knew it was going to be wrong, but I didn't recognize why I was being stubborn.
So is that a self-preservation type thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've all got things like that, but I didn't recognize it. I really did not recognize it as a self-preservation.
Right.
Yeah, I'm very opinionated, and I'm the first to admit it. But that kept me going. If I hadn't been opinionated, I wouldn't have survived. I would have literally been an absolute wreck long before I had my nervous breakdown.
But in the modern day, where fake news is two words I never thought would ever be put together, are two of the words of the day. The fact that you are opinionated, where people actually can have an opinion, and stick to it. I think that's important, and I think it's to be celebrated. The biggest issue I can see, and when I say I can see it, I see it happening around me, is that women feel they have to conform to a certain stereotype as presented on media, because if they don't, they're obviously not good enough. And I think I would scream out from the hilltops, for goodness sake, just focus on what makes you happy. Don't be happy just because you feel like you can conform to that Kardashian stereotype or whatever it is. Be happy because you've found your voice. You know? Would you care to wrap this all up in a bow, please?
Empowerment means that you take control of how you feel, what you do, and truthfully, what you think.
Yes. Yeah, it's about owning the whole thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Guys, I know I'm perhaps the wrong gender for discussing this, but actually, you know, it's eye-opening. It's eye-opening. And to all of you out there who are pondering about, well, you know, should I do this or should I do that? If you feel it needs to be said, I would recommend saying it. Otherwise, you may end up being in your 60s or your 70s and think, I could have said that a lot sooner. Thank you so much, Karen Bashford. Every day's a learning day with Karen. Thank you all for watching. Try and remember that if you keep your feet on the ground, but keep reaching upwards and standing in your own power, you can achieve greatness. I promise you, whether it's greatness in a small life, a medium life, or a big life, it doesn't matter. You can still achieve greatness just by standing in your own power. Until next time, take care and have a wonderful weekend and look after that mental health. Bye-bye.
Bye.